Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Diana. I'm here with Kale. We're just so grateful that everyone's taken time out of their day to join us here on this session. You are logged in here, just to make sure we're all logged in here, Advancing Community Equity for Upward Mobility, a higher education industry community of practice. And I would like just to take a moment to give a few housekeeping tips. Just want to let everyone know that I'm just gonna double check here to make sure that this is being recorded. Okay, it looks like it is being recorded. We just didn't get the notification on it. Okay, so yeah, this is being recorded so that if at any time you have to pop out of the room or you want to go ahead and play this back, you'll have up to 90 days to listen to the session once our conference closes. Also, if you have any questions during the session, please just go ahead and post those in the chat. Feel free also to introduce yourself so you can network with other attendees that are in this virtual session. And we'll be monitoring the questions during this session and answering those for you. And we have here our speakers, Miss Melissa Goldberg, Dr. Amber Crady, who we're trying to get her logged in right now. Hopefully we'll get her logged in to present her part of the session. If not, unfortunately, we'll be skipping over her section, but we're doing some troubleshooting right now. And we have Georgia Reagan and Stasia Edwards that will be presenting for everyone this afternoon. So grateful that we're here. Thank you, ladies, for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Melissa Goldberg.
Thank you so much, Diana, and
so welcome.
welcome everyone. And thanks for joining our session, Advancing Community Equity and Upward Mobility, or ACE Up. And we're just pleased to share information. And as Diana mentioned, as we get started, it would be really great if you could share with us who's in the room. So go ahead and introduce yourself, say hi, maybe say your name, the role you play, and where you're from. My name is Melissa Goldberg, and I'm having trouble advancing. There we go. And I'm the Director of Competencies and Credentials at Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. And in that role, I have the opportunity to lead the ACE Up Community of Practice. And I'm joined today by Amber Grady, who is the Dean of Community Outreach at Arkansas State University, Newport. And I see that Amber has been able to log in, which I'm thrilled about. Georgia Reagan, Strategy Officer, Employment Alliance Credential Programs at Lumina Foundation, and Stasia Edwards, Deputy Provost at City Colleges of Chicago. And given that our discussion today is around equity initiatives, I'd really like to ask each of our audience members to think a little bit and maybe type in what word comes to mind when you hear the word equity. So in January of 2023, while you're thinking about that and looking to post, in January 2023, with the support of Lumina Foundation, Corporation for a Skilled Workforce, or CSW, launched a community of practice to support colleges and their industry partners pursue their goals of recruiting, preparing a diverse workforce. So today, you'll hear about ACE Up, including Lumina's inspiration for supporting the work, the ACE Up's goals and elements, and the perspectives of two of our ACE Up community of practice members. We've built in some time for Q&A at the end of the session, so please do feel free to type your questions in the chat as we're speaking, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So at this point, I would like to turn the microphone over to Georgia Reagan, who's going to provide some context of ACE Up and this equity discussion from the perspective of Lumina Foundation. Georgia?
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you so much for having us here. I hope everyone's having a good conference so far. So as Melissa mentioned, I'm Georgia Reagan. I'm a strategy officer with Lumina Foundation. We are, if you haven't heard of us, we are a private foundation, and we support investments in post-secondary education for all adult learners in the country. And you may have heard of our Goal 2025. I want to give a little bit of insight into that. So almost 15 years ago, we came up with a goal that by the year 2025, 60% of adults in the US would earn some kind of post-secondary credential. This was 15 years ago. So at that time, this was primarily bachelor's degrees, 4-year degrees. And as really our goal moved forward, we were learning that there were a lot of short-term credentials, non-degree credentials. There's a lot of different names for some of the shorter-term credentials that folks were enrolling in that we weren't necessarily counting as part of this goal, but these credentials were leading to wages and careers in high wage fields. And so we have created since then a data network called Stronger Nation, where you can look state by state to see the attainment goal in your state. You can even break it down to city to figure out what the attainment is in your area. And that includes 4-year degrees, 2-year associate's degrees, as well as some short-term credentials. Sometimes that is hard to get that data because there are a lot of credentials, but we are actively working on that. And so one of the things that our Northern Star for us was really, we wanted to create this attainment goal. We wanted to for students, particularly students of color, to get into these credential programs and to move into a career. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was really to reduce those racial equity gaps that we know exist. I'll use my own state of Colorado, for example. Colorado, we have our own attainment goal, and we reached that 60%. Years ago. However, with us digging deep into the data, what we learned was that the problem with Colorado is that there were a lot of people like myself moving in from out of state who already had degrees, whereas the people born and raised in Colorado were not actually enrolling or completing into these credential programs. So that's one of the reasons that guides us in our grant making is that we want to make programs, degree programs, credential programs more accessible for all. We want to make sure that there is support, lots of student and holistic supports for the students that are in the programs, as well as the workers, making sure that they can get employment. And we want to make sure that these credentials lead to good jobs. So we know that there are a lot of credentials out there, and we want to make sure that this can lead you to a job that you can support your family on a livable wage, regardless of where you live in the country. And so as you'll see, Goal 2025 is coming up. 2025 is right around the corner, and we're currently looking at refreshing our next strategy. That will be a formal announcement coming up in the spring. But through our goal, that's really how we got onto investing in the ASAP initiative. And you can go to the next slide, please, and I'll share a little bit just about why the ASAP is important to us. So you'll hear more about folks directly in the cohort, in the network, but really we saw this as a really strong community of practice where people were in a safe space to learn best practices from each other, to learn lessons learned. What were some challenges? Melissa and her team were able to create really tailored support to colleges. So we know that the approach of one size fits all does not work for colleges, because there are rural colleges, there are urban colleges. And so Melissa and her team, you'll see that they really looked to work closely with the colleges to create some tailored support and support them in creating and maintaining employer relationships, which we know can be really hard, and continuing their support for student and worker access and success, to make sure that the programs are accessible and that the students are able to, make a streamlined approach through enrollment, completion, and hopefully employment. And then ultimately, this project aligns with our mission, Lumina's mission, to reduce the racial equity gaps that we know exist in our community colleges, in our four-year colleges, and to ensure that every learner has access to a quality training program that can then lead to a career where they can support their family. So I'm really excited for you all to learn more about the ACE Up and hear from folks who have been actively involved in it and on the ground doing the hard work. So I'll pass it right back over to Melissa. Oh, Melissa, I think you're muted.
Melissa, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
No
So
worries.
thank you so much, Georgia. And at this point, I'd like to tell you a bit about ACE Up, which is an initiative that really fits squarely into the mission of my organization, CSW. We're a national nonprofit workforce organization that advances policies and practices which increase economic mobility for all, with a particular focus on impacting people of color. ACE Up is a community of practice among colleges and their industry partners designed to identify and advance effective policies and practices to increase economic mobility among all people who have among people who have been traditionally left out of labor market success. And the idea really stemmed initially from the U.S. Department of Labor's Strengthening Community Colleges Round 2 funding opportunity announcement, which for the first time for DOL included equity metrics. And so the idea was to create a community of peers to help colleges meet those goals that they set. And as you can see, ACE Up, sorry. And so the goals, sorry about this, of ACE Up were really to identify, design, and uplift strategies to really help create more inclusive work environments and better outcomes, and also to share best practices among the community of practice members. And as you can see, our members are from across the country, north and south, east and west, and the Midwest. And they really represent, urban, rural, and suburban campuses. They're large and small, and there's a really diverse population of learners who are represented across and among our members. And ACE Up is really grounded in 5 elements of success, which really serve to kind of undergird all community of practice activities. And the elements include, as you can see, aligning policy and practice, enhancing student services, cultivating employer and industry partnerships, making data-driven decisions, and advancing institutionalized equity. And just to give you a little bit more of a flavor of what that means around advancing and institutionalizing equity, it's really around identifying, developing tools and strategies to kind of identify and address equity gaps. Under aligning policy and practice, it's really around looking at those policies that are made and operationalizing those, and focusing in on practice to represent those policies. Around optimizing employer partnerships, it's really effectively around really looking, meeting with employers at all different levels, learning about industry and the labor market, looking at opportunities to kind of co-design programs to meet employers' needs and those of learners, and jointly looking at investments in advancing effective practice, and around enhancing student services. We really focus in around the learner voice and being learner and worker centered around that, and developing supportive services to improve success. And of course, around making data-driven decisions, it's really around using disaggregated data to help inform program design. And at this point, what I'd like to do is now turn this over to Dr. Amber Grady, who can tell you a bit about what's happening at Arkansas State University, Newport. So Amber?
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited about being here and the opportunity to share. ASAP has truly been one of those opportunities that ASU Newport has really been grateful for. It has benefited us greatly. And so let me spend just a little bit of time sharing about who we are at ASU Newport. And so ASU Newport, we are a 2-year community college. We have 3 campuses in a very busy corridor of counties in Northeast Arkansas. We connect with some major cities, but we are very rurally located. But cities like Memphis, Tennessee, Little Rock, St. Louis are pretty close to us. We work really hard to meet the demands of the students that are in our communities. Really grateful for the partnerships that we have with Workforce that allows us to do what we do. You can see here that I put and I'm sharing about our mission, which is ASU Newport will provide accessible, affordable, innovative learning opportunities that transform lives and strengthen our regional economy. And so, in having such a mission and vision for our campus, ASAP was exactly where we needed to be. We recognized that there were so many students that we needed to be serving, so many things that we could do to strengthen the work that we were doing. I actually was brought in about 2 years ago, and my initial position was Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I currently serve the institution as Dean for Community Outreach and also still serve as our Chief Diversity Officer, but we'll get into a little bit about what that means and how that's happening in Arkansas. But that is our vision and vision and mission, and how we really see our work aligning directly with what ASAP was doing. Next, I'll share with you about our core values. You can see here that diversity sits at the center of what our institution has identified as what is essential to us being able to serve. So more than just being able to bring students to our campus, we also have belonging there. And so I spend a lot of my time and in my work making sure that our employees and our students alike are making sure that we create atmospheres and environment for workplace and learning that allows us to feel connected, that we're a part of what is happening. And so what I can share about the counties for our main campus, and that's Jackson and Craighead counties, we serve populations, have roughly 20 to 25% of our population that identify as people of color. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, this correlates directly with what our student body looks like right now, but we all have been able to identify where those gaps exist. And so having the conversation around equity, when I came on 2 years ago, you would think we all understand it. We all know what we need to do. We all understand what inclusive environments are, but there was very much a need and a gap in the work. And so integrating equity into every part of our campus environment and our community outreach has been really critical to seeing some increases, not only in our persons of color, but just in diversity in programs, equity in programs and practices and processes. And we see our core values really being the driving factor in how we can shape some of this work that we are striving to do. Next there, I'm sharing with you our strategic priorities. And so for ASU Newport, it's really been crucial for us to identify what are going to be the driving parameters. What are these priorities going to be? What's going to shape how we do the work that we need to do? And so we've identified 4. And for us, that is student success, employee success, institutional excellence, and community engagement. And so when we talk about equity work, when we talk about student success, when we talk about employee success, we know, when we talk about equity work, we know student and employee success is going to be at the center of how we can accomplish that. And so we have a shared community where we're working to make sure that everybody feels supported and connected. But I'm grateful that our administrators have created an environment where I have the opportunity. I think I have one of the better roles on campus because I have the unique opportunity of saying, Our students can be successful when we take care of our employees. Our employees can be successful when they have the resources that they need to be successful. And when we're prioritizing institutional excellence and making sure that the data is driving what we are creating. And then we can directly impact our communities and engage in such a way where we're meeting the needs that they have. And so strengthening those partnerships, even through our connection and collaboration with the ASUP community, has been so beneficial and rewarding to the work that we've been able to start doing. I would like to see us moving a lot further in it, but the work that we've done, the success we have had, I can directly tie to a lot of the engagements we've had in the ASUP community. You know, hearing from folks across the country who can share about best practices and what they're doing and how they're engaging and have been able to achieve some of those increases has been beneficial in helping us to move the pendulum forward. And even since we've joined ASUP, we've connected with other agencies and other initiatives that allowed us to be moving forward. So I'm really proud of that work. And so those are our strategic priorities and how we see that shaping our work with ASUP. All right, next, I share here a little bit about ASU Newport's graduation rates. And so over the last several years, we've seen significant increases. While we recognize gaps, we're working toward where those equity gaps exist. Really proud, we now have a fully functioning institutional research department that is also prioritizing equity. We partner with them to do that, some work that we've been able to accomplish over the last couple of years. Our annual enrollment usually is somewhere between 43 and 4,500 between our 3 campuses. We award more than 350 degrees, associate's degrees, and then about 1,100 certificates. Our retention rate sits somewhere around 60%. Our state average is 55%. And so we're making strides. Still a lot more we hope to gain and accomplish, but I'm excited to see us having those conversations of ways that we can truly close those equity gaps and directly impact our communities in a greater way. And then lastly, I'm sharing with you all about credentials awarded. And what I wanted to share here is how we've seen some increases. You can see there was a little bit of a dip, but we're glad to see how we're continuing to move forward. We work directly with industry partners. We have advisory meetings. They share with us the kind of things they need from us and our students and in our programs. And we're excited to see how those credentials awarded directly align with what our workforce is communicating to us that they need. And so those partnerships have been really beneficial in helping us to be on the right track. And then I just did want to share here while I'm talking about credentials awarded, we have recently adapted a new equity statement that I would like to share. And it just says ASUN is committed to fostering an inclusive learning environment where we celebrate diverse backgrounds, ensure equal access, promote holistic practices, and encourage cultural awareness. As an equitable campus, ASU Newport will strive to eliminate achievement gaps while ensuring that all individuals feel they are valued, respected, and belong. And so we're doing really great work. Grateful for the partnership with ASUP. I really feel like our leadership and our campus community has really gotten behind all of this work. And as I started out talking about us empowering our communities and advancing individuals, it's really that goal. And I'm seeing us doing that for everybody. So grateful to share with you about who we are at ASU Newport. I'll turn it back over to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you so much for sharing that. And what a powerful equity statement. Really appreciate your reading that for the audience. At this point, I would like to now turn the Zoom over to Stacia Edwards, who is the Deputy Provost at City Colleges of Chicago. So to you, Stacia.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And again, it was great to hear from both Georgia and Amber. We're thrilled to be here this morning. Thank you so much for the invitation and also to be part of the ACEP community of practice. What I want to do this morning is just tell you a little bit about City Colleges of Chicago and also then the work we're doing in the ACEP community. So City Colleges, our vision is to be the most accessible higher education engine of socioeconomic mobility and racial equity, empowering all Chicagoans to take part in building a stronger and more just city. I'm not going to read all the slides, but I just think it's so important that's up front. That's what we do here in the city of Chicago. And we believe very strongly in that statement about socioeconomic mobility. We really want to make sure that when students engage with us, that they can then achieve what they're looking for and also then benefit from this great city of Chicago because there are so many opportunities. Go ahead, next slide. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the students that we serve at City Colleges. More than 75% of our students are Black or Latinx. And then when you think about the population, we did a HOPE study about basic needs prior to the pandemic, and we just got the results back. And so what you're seeing here on this slide is where our students were in basic needs prior to the pandemic. Where we are now is that 59% of our students are housing insecure. That has gone up. 50% of our students are food insecure. That has gone up. And 16% are in the homeless status. Homeless means that they don't have a fixed regular rate, just a regular adequate place of stay. So like couch surfing counts for us in that homeless space. We can talk all day about the HOPE study, but what we're seeing is that our students are even more impacted in that basic needs space. 69% of our students expressed that they had at least, they faced at least one of these factors. So here we have this diverse population and we have basic need. So then next slide, please. We have 7 community colleges. All of them are independently accredited and they're located across the city of Chicago. And we serve ultimately more than 62,000 students. We do continuing education, we do adult education, and of course we do our regular credit programs. Next slide. And our students, we have done some analysis of our students. And I really like to show this picture because it shows that everyone isn't the same when they walk in our doors. We have your traditional student who's a full-time student. We also have students who are full-time employees and that sometimes they're going to school full-time in addition. Sometimes they're going part-time. But ultimately, all the students who walk in our door are here because they want to change where they are in our economy. They want to gain a skill. They want to see some of that upward mobility. Next slide. So that's why we set up our programming. It's probably similar to what all of you see already, but we think about things from stackable certificates, and we start at that 15 credit hour basic certificate. We then have an advanced certificate, which usually takes about a year. And then that feeds into associate degrees at both the science and arts levels. And then we're paying a lot of attention right now to those transfer pathways, and then making sure that students, once they achieve the associate degree, if that's what they desire, don't have any credit loss as they go into those bachelor's degrees. Chicago is a very smart city. Many of the jobs do require students to have a bachelor's degree. And so what we attempt to do is make sure that they have the skills, the minimum skill that can get them connected with the labor market, but then also they can continue on with their education as easily as possible so that they can achieve their ultimate goals. Next slide, please. So we have a strategic framework. We have 6 levers, and one of those levers is economic responsiveness. The city of Chicago, as I mentioned, is an incredible economy, as you can imagine. And the cool thing for me, I used to be in Ohio where this was not the case. But here in Chicago, there is no industry that has more than 20% of the market. And so that means actually in an economic downturn or where something is happening, there's always something that's thriving and growing. And that's kind of an exciting place to be in when it comes to education. It's a challenge as well, but there are always then those opportunities where we can help our students connect. Next slide, please. So I mentioned before that we have 7 independently accredited colleges, and our colleges can't be all things to all people across the city. And because we have that lever of economic responsiveness, we have created a model called the Centers of Excellence. And each one of our community colleges actually is a center of excellence in one of the areas that's important to the Chicago economy. So City Colleges is really set up as a sector strategy. And what that means for our employers and for our city is that someone who's an employer, let's say in healthcare, knows what college to call. If they have a question, if they're interested in accessing our students, that college also would be the one that holds all of the clinical practice. Now, I'm describing that, and you might be thinking, well, that's just one place in this big city. The other aspect of the community or of the centers of excellence is that we really need those centers of excellence to think about access. And so in that healthcare example, while one college may be responsible for the programming and the curriculum and the hiring, they're also responsible for making sure students have access at other places in the city. And that can be quite the challenge, as you can imagine. But we really feel strongly about this model because, again, it gives a college a focus, and then we also can pay attention to that access. So next slide, please. I believe that Center of Excellence model does help us build deep partnerships with our employers. And we give employers in the city I would call it a menu of opportunities for them to participate with us. We like to get them in the door by asking them to participate in curriculum development or just advise us on what they think is coming along. Another step for them might be job shadows or just coming in and talking about what their industry is. And then our gold standard truly is a work-based learning experience, a paid work-based learning experience. We have many companies through something called the Chicago Apprenticeship Network who have engaged with us. And 5 years ago, they weren't even hiring from community colleges, and they now look at us as their strategy for hiring. One of the examples I like to use, the president or CEO of Aon, he basically tells the people that he's talking to, whether it's a business forum or the Chamber of Commerce, this isn't philanthropy. This is not philanthropy for Aon. This is Aon's hiring strategy. They know that they have to connect with the educational partners in order to make sure that they have employees so that they can continue to do their work. And part of that also means that they have to be set up to address a diverse population of students that are coming in through different channels and different experiences than may currently exist in their organization. Next slide, please. So that's one of the reasons that we're really excited to be with the ACE Up community of practice. We have benefited from being part of this from the beginning. And recently we had an opportunity to be outside of our office and kind of do a deep dive to really think about what is it that we need to make sure that we're doing so that we can make sure our diverse population of students is connecting more easily with these businesses and the opportunities that exist in our economy. One of the things that emerged for us is our population of students doesn't know. They just don't know about the opportunities that exist. So how is it that we're going to better inform our students about the opportunities and also help them understand that they're qualified for some of these opportunities? You know, we all talk about, we have different languages, right? So when you get a syllabus, it says, these are your learning outcomes. Well, many times a student doesn't translate a learning outcome to a skill. And so we want our students to be able to talk about the skills that they're building, even doing a project in a class. Additionally, what we see with employers is sometimes they talk about skills, but we don't really translate that or know what they're talking about. And so making that match and helping the employers and the students talk in the same language is one of the things that we really are working on as part of our ASAP community of practice participation. And then additionally, we are working on some materials to help our teams at our colleges talk to employers, doing training so that they can talk to employers about the benefits of a diverse workforce, and also what's necessary in order to make that happen. You know, when we're talking about, you know, for us, we really want to go to scale with work-based learning. It's exciting and it's terrifying at the same time, because anyone who's done it knows it's very labor intensive. You got to make the matches. You have to make sure people have the qualifications. You have to make sure that the employer is ready. But ultimately, when that employer is ready, what does it mean for them? How do we talk them through that? Make sure that they have people on site who are paying attention to what the student is doing. They're articulating what that student is going to do in the job, and that they're providing the evaluation, right, for the student when they're in that job. Again, that's very labor intensive, but we want to make sure that the people on the ground at our colleges are able to talk about that return on investment for those employers. So those really are the outcomes that we're looking for through our participation in this ASAP community of practice. And we are really excited to continue the work and the conversation. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Melissa.
Thank you, Stacia. Thank you so much. And I have to just point out that one of the most common questions that we get among the members of the community of practice is, how do we have those hard conversations with the employers? And it's just so exciting to hear about the training that you're doing with your colleagues and staff around having those very conversations. Before I have some, would love to sort of engage all of you in a conversation, but at the start of the webinar, we did ask all of you who are online to sort of give us a word, what comes to mind when you hear the word equity. And unfortunately, I can't see your responses, but Diana, if you wouldn't mind just sharing some of what folks had posted.
Yes, let me see if we had any responses. I don't see any responses as of right now. Let me go ahead and post the question again.
Okay, that's fine. And I just want to also remind folks, if you have any questions for our speakers, to go ahead and put them in the chat, but I do. And so I think maybe we'll just jump in there. And Diana, let me know if you see any of those.
Yeah,
Oh,
I do,
go ahead.
Melissa. I do have one question from Rachel. She
Mhm.
does ask, are the centers of excellence replicated by community colleges in other states or other cities in Illinois or outside of Illinois?
Stacy, you want to
I don't know if anyone.
respond to that?
Can you say that
Hear the
again?
question?
Yeah, sure. Are the centers of excellence replicated by community colleges in other states or other cities in Illinois or outside Illinois? I don't know if that's a question for Stasia.
Would be probably. So we
You
have
know.
we have talked to other community colleges about the centers of excellence. And actually we worked with AIR, the American Institution of Research, and they helped us create a playbook. And the playbook for us has been super helpful. You know, sometimes you develop a tool and it sits on a shelf. I use it almost every day. And it really talks about like the personnel that's needed. You can't just have somebody doing the work with employers off the side of their desk, right? So you really have to have somebody thinking about curriculum. You have to think about hiring. You have to think about professional development. You have to think about training your advisors. And so we put all that, we did a lot of work, and we put all of that into a playbook. And that's something that we have had conversations with other, it's more of a system approach, I think, but other people have come to us and we are happy to share what we've learned. make you look at our scars, but boy, we learned a lot along the way, and we are happy to share. We are happy to share.
Yes,
That-
do you mind providing that resource, Stasia, or do you have a link that we could?
Sure, let me see if I can look it up.
Okay, and I'll add it to the chat if we can get that.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
great. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to point out that there are some other, there's another ASAP member I know in Virginia that also has a designation as a Center of Excellence, and that's Reynolds Community College as well. So I'm going to jump in with maybe a broader base question. And, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, we launched ASAP Community of Practice in January of 2023. And since we've launched, the Supreme Court has ruled on affirmative action in college admissions, and we've just witnessed an increase in anti-DEI legislation across the country. And so, Amber, I want to ask you, I know that there have been changes in Arkansas since you joined in, and I'm just wondering if you can share with the audience sort of how you're navigating through those changes.
Sure. So, really challenging times, lots of changes. We have had some changes already put in practice, not teaching critical race theory in the classroom. Really, our legislators are monitoring and watching, DEI related events and practices, how funding is being used at our public institutions. Well, I'm a part of the Arkansas State University system. We have two systems that make up Arkansas. The University of Arkansas system, even before legislation send out any mandates, they made the decision to go ahead and dissolve their DEI program and really move that to the student success kind of sector. And so you can imagine, all of our colleges are having these conversations. How do we continue to work? How do we prioritize what we know is going to be necessary? And so what I can say is that whether we call it student success or we call it diversity, equity, and inclusion, me and a lot of my colleagues remain as committed to the work. I have been very fortunate. My chancellor is very supportive. And so we have had to be creative about how that looks, but continuing to advocate and have those conversations. And so on my campus, it's really a lot of the training, Melissa. So we talk about belonging, we talk about diversity. This is not going away, and we can all talk about how we disagree or agree. But in my state, we can kind of see that it's coming. There's going to be more strict mandates that are coming. Some schools are even removing terminology. And so there's some questions about that. But I think, remaining committed to the work, remaining an advocate, keeping the student first is really going to be what allows us to keep that work moving forward. And so I've been really fortunate. I'm in a place where I'm supported fully, but I have colleagues where it looks a little different. And so being a part of communities like ASAP definitely helps to support and keep having the conversation about what the data is reflecting for us. So equity is really very much a part of how we're driving that. But to answer your question, I would say part of how we're navigating that is I'm prioritizing training. Because if we can help folks understand what student success really is, if we can help folks understand how to relate and interact, no matter what background, then we're helping to develop that true inclusive nature and really creating those environments of belonging. And I think if we can get to that, then it doesn't matter what we call it.
I hear that. And thank you so much for sharing that. And it actually ties in. So we did get a response to a word that people think about when they hear the word equity, and it's fairness. And I think what you're describing sort of ties into all of that as well. Stacia, it's a little bit different in Illinois. I mean, there hasn't been state legislation, but I'm just wondering if what's happening nationwide has implications for how you approach your work.
I would say that And we're really dug in on this being about the economy. In order for our economy to work, we're going to have to make sure that people have the ability to engage with it. And, you know, we have all kinds of things that have happened in the city of Chicago. I mean, geez, just look it up sometime if you want a good giggle or if you just want to be mortified. I mean, really. So you've got disinvestment that has happened over time. You have a lack of education, which results in a lack of training, and then a lack of ability to connect with that economy. But for the economy to grow and to thrive in the way we want it to, I mean, we're talking about, I just got to Tech Hub on Monday. There's 50 startup companies that are working on things related to inflammation. Let's all just think about that. There's going to have to be an on-ramp for all people who currently live in our environment and in our city to connect with these opportunities, or they're not going to be able to grow. Those companies aren't going to be able to grow. So I think from my perspective is we've got to have our messaging very clear that our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about making the economy work. So I feel that anything can change overnight. Tomorrow we could wake up and need to be thinking differently about our strategies or what we're talking about. But ultimately, I still think back to what that employer at Aon said, that CEO who said, this isn't philanthropy. This is our hiring strategy, and it's the only way we're going to have the number of people in the jobs to do the work that we want to do, because these companies want to be leading providers. They have to have people, they have to have that ability to hire. They have to have the ability to train people, and they have to have people in the jobs that can do the work. So, yeah, I take that kind of strong approach, but I really believe this is an economic message. And I feel that in places, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I feel like some places maybe have lost sight of it being the true economic message. Because some of our states right now are really thriving because of the decade or decades of work that have been going into making sure that more students or more people have obtained a high school diploma, are getting that college education or that training that they need in order to provide that high demand service that is needed by the economy. So it's an economic message 100% for me.
Could not agree with you more. CSW, one of my colleagues at CSW recently published a research piece about equity messaging. And one of the biggest sort of messages that come out there is exactly that. It is an economic imperative, and we need to make sure that everyone and the broadest group of individuals are highly trained and qualified and are prepared to contribute. And yeah, so couldn't agree with you more. And so, Georgia, I'm just going to toss it out to you and just find out about Lumina. Have the changes had implications for the way that Lumina approaches and that you approach your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I would first start with Lumina. We continue to remain committed to racial equity to be one of our North Stars now, and as well as when our next strategy is announced. And we'll continue working with all states. So states that maybe have had some new legislation, that doesn't mean that we won't stop working there. And I think what that means for us is, just continuing to have tailored support and conversations about what the communities that in the states where we're working or where these colleges are located, what do the communities need? And really having conversations with employers, as Amber and Stacia mentioned already, having conversations with employers and trying to find similar language. A lot of times in higher education, we use a lot of acronyms, and we use different vocabulary than what the business community will use. And so really coming together and aligning around a common goal. Usually we have the same goal. We want to help people in our community get trained and get into the workforce and give back to our community. And that's the same goal usually that employers have. So, kind of coming together and having conversations around aligning around one goal, and kind of trying to remove the acronyms and come to similar language. But Lumina will continue to support states and organizations across the country, and work specifically on what works, what language, what vocabulary works in that community, what works in that state, and also get feedback from our grantees and you all on how can we as philanthropy be most helpful.
Thank you. And it looks like we are coming on time. I just want to encourage folks, if you want to learn more about ACE Up, or learn more about any of the work that folks talked about today, please feel free to reach out to us. I hope that my co-speakers don't mind that I put that out there. And also wanted to mention, invite you to visit the ACE Up website at ace-up.org, and you can access resources that we have available. And unfortunately, I think we've come to the end of our session today, but I just want to thank you so much. And just one thing I want to say on the way out is I did see something that Carla shared when she hears the word equity, is she thinks of social justice. And I think that encapsulates a lot of what we were hearing about today. So thank you all very much, and have a
Yes.
wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for your content, for your wisdom. Stasia, Dr. Amber Crady, Georgia, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This conference wouldn't be the same without each of you and all your wisdom that you've shared upon us today. Thank you to all the participants that entered this chat as well. Like I had mentioned, if you want to play this back and listen to this at a later time, you have up to 90 days after the conference ends to have access to our recordings. And also, we just want to ask if everyone can take a moment on our platform here. There is an option to go ahead and submit a survey for this session. We would greatly, greatly appreciate it if everyone could submit a survey, just giving us your feedback, letting us know what you loved about it, any extra information you want us to provide, because we really curate our future conferences around our surveys. So please take a moment and fill those out. And yeah, thank you. We'll go ahead and close this session. Hope everyone has a great day. Bye. Thank you.